Good morning! Welcome to Levels Plus Weekly, episode 59. We're going to talk about a sequel to this thing, the Mega Drive Mini 2. I am very excited about Sega's sequel to this little guy, and we're going to talk about the Mega Drive Mini 2, the Genesis 2 Mini, the differences between the two, and why exactly am I so hyped about this thing. I'm pretty excited about this video, actually. I like I said in the reaction to Wave 3, I'm preempting the Dual Life Perspective video a week because I just think that this mini console has the potential to be stronger than the Genesis Mini, which was strong enough. But one thing that I really appreciate about the TurboGrafx 16 Mini is its selection of games just not necessarily being traditional. It had a lot of the things you might expect on it, but there was also a lot of pleasant surprises, and I feel like that's what Sega's kind of doing with the Mega Drive Mini 2. The Genesis 2 Mini, on the other hand, as it stands as of this recording, I'm a little concerned about, but we'll get to that in a minute. You know, I just started recording. I recorded the intro. I had a little Finn fussing to deal with because he decided to interrupt the film shoot, and by the time that all got taken care of, the lighting completely changed. So thankfully I'm just going to be in the tiny little corner for most of this video. Speaking of, let's go ahead and get myself set up here. Let's dive into this proper, shall we? So the Mega Drive Mini 2 site is really nice in that it breaks all the games down on an individual basis. The Genesis Mini 2 site only has JPEG, so if I were to click on Sonic CD, for example, it would just take me to a box art shot. So it kind of shows the priority that Sega has with this console, which is for the Japanese market. What I want to do is I want to go through the Mega Drive Mini 2 games first. I'll point out which ones are on both the Genesis 2 and the Mega Drive Mini 2 as we go through, and it'll be in the waves that have been announced so far. So as of today, there's been 3 waves for Japan and technically 2 for America, even though they announced 23 of the games at once already. I'm just going to consider that a wave process. And I'll tell you what little I know about these games as best I can. I am not an expert on the Mega Drive library by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know some things about some of them. So, Fantasy Zone is one of the bonus games. It's on both. And this was brought to the Genesis by the enterprising hobbyist who did the Darius port for the original Mega Drive Mini and Genesis Mini. There is a Super Fantasy Zone that Sunsoft made, but I don't recall if that was on the original or not. But this is the arcade game as it was originally released, converted to Genesis hardware. Next up is Magical Taruruto-kun, which is a Game Freak developed platformer for the Mega Drive that will absolutely not be on the Genesis 2 Mini. Absolutely will not. It looks cute. I have no real basis of understanding for this license or this game, but what I've seen of it looks cute in motion, so I'm curious to try it out. Thunder Force 4. This is on the Genesis 2 Mini as well as a Lightning Force. This is one of my favorite shoot-'em-ups of all time. I adore this game. It's got an amazing soundtrack, one of the best on the Genesis in my opinion, with stunning visuals, smooth gameplay, and a challenge level that's not too hard, but just about right. This was definitely one of the games that needed to be on here, since they only had 3 on the original series. Shining in the Darkness, or as it's known in Japan, Shining and the Darkness. This is on both. This is around, I think this came out a little before Shining Force, and is a first-person dungeon crawler. So it's a little bit different than the Shining Force games, but it's, I believe, made by Camelot, or as they, I forget what their original name was. It was like Sonic something. Yeah, this came out in 91, and I think Shining Force came out in 92. But this seems like a solid enough game. It's got a good art style. I'm not really sure if it's something that's going to appeal to me, because this type of game I kind of stopped being interested in when I was going through my Commodore 64 phase with the Bard's Tale and all that. But I will probably give it a try. Next up is Bonanza Bros. This is on both. This is a co-op action stealth game where you have to make your way through various locations to swipe things and not get caught. This is definitely, I think, a bigger deal in Japan than it is here. These characters would go on to be in the, let me make sure I say this right, the Puzzle and Action series, but those games were never localized here until recently. So I think that this is definitely one of those games that Japanese players will probably appreciate more, but we have seen it quite a few times on Genesis compilations here in North America. Next is Virtua Racing. This is probably one of the most advanced Mega Drive Genesis games in terms of visuals, and was definitely trying to compete with the Super FX chip back in the day. And AM2, who handled a lot of Sega's early 3D stuff, including Virtua Fighter, handled the development duties on this, and I think this is kind of like the prototype for their golden era of arcade racing games that came in the 90s, following, of course, the golden era that came in the 80s with Outrun and Hang On and other games. But this predates Daytona USA, Sega Rally, so this is kind of a nice in-between of sorts, and it's cool that that's here. I don't really know how well the 3D is going to play out on the Genesis, but we'll give it a shot. We'll see. That is on both, by the way. Here's something that is not currently on both. Popful Mail, the first Mega CD game. This is by Falcom, and is definitely a cult classic in the States. It was brought here by Working Designs, and it was a notable absence when the Genesis 2 Mini was announced. And as of right now, it's still unannounced. And now there's even more reason to be concerned, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I have heard wonderful things about the Mega CD version of Popful Mail. I am very excited to try it out. I do wish she wore pants, because I always wish these things. But I am excited to give this game a shot, because I have heard that it is a wonderful game. Next up is Mansion of Haunted Souls. Now this actually did get localized and is on both versions. It's an adventure game, but I don't know that much more about it, to be honest. It definitely has some 3D aspects going on with it, and I don't really know if it's well regarded or not, but it's here, and it's kind of cool to see it included on both versions of the machine. Sonic CD, this had to be here. This is the big Sonic game that's not Sonic 3 that was absent. And it's going to be really cool to see this on the original hardware, because Sonic CD's various ports over the years have been based on the PC Windows version. So I am very intrigued to see what Sonic CD on this Mega CD it was like. Very, very curious, because this is my favorite Sonic game to this day. I don't know why necessarily I like it more than Sonic Mania or Sonic 2, beyond the fact that it just left a really strong imprint on me as a child, and nostalgia is a powerful thing. I do hope that the regional difference continues to be a thing on the Mega Drive Mini 2. And what I mean by that is that in the Genesis Mini, you could switch the language of the machine, and the games that were included switched to the appropriate region. So if I wanted to play Sonic 2 from Japan, all I had to do is switch the language and it would go to the Japanese ROM instead of the English ROM. So I'm hoping that's the case because I love the American soundtrack. Japanese soundtrack is great too, but I have the nostalgia for the American one. So I'm hoping that that's an option. We'll find out. Shining Force CD. This, to my understanding, is an upgraded port of the Game Gear Sonic or Shining Force games. And I think that's pretty cool. This is actually on both versions of the console with very Americanized art. Although I do have to say I like the American box art a lot more than a lot of the other localized box arts that we got in that era. But I believe there's at least 2 full campaigns on here because there was 2 Game Gear related Shining Force games. So that's a big deal. With 2 Shining games announced right out the gate, though, it makes me a little concerned about Shining Force 2. I guess we'll find out if that's going to be included in the near future when the rest of the games are announced next month. The last game, I believe, in the first run, I think we've covered the rest, is Sylphlead. I don't really know how to pronounce this, but that's what I'm going to say. It is a 3D shoot-'em-up by Game Arts. And this was the indicator to me that there was going to be a bigger announcement down the road. That's not to say anything derogatory about Sylphlead because it's supposedly extremely good. I have never played it, but it's definitely been hailed as one of the best shoot-'em-ups in this style. But when I saw Game Arts, I was like, oh! Sega has gone on to say that having Game Arts as part of the Mega Drive Mini 2 was essential for its success. And I'm glad to hear that, because it's true. Alright, so that's Wave 1. Wave 2's bonus game is Star Mobile from Mindware, which originally was a PC Engine title that I believe was being developed for the Mega Drive as well and got shelved for whatever reason, and they still had it. So when M2 and Sega were asking around, Mindware was like, yo, we've got this, and so it's here. It looks like an interesting puzzle game too. Columns 3. If you watched my reaction, you saw my response to Columns 3 was pretty downtrodden, because I don't like this series. This is currently a Japanese exclusive, and it's interesting that it is, because I guess it never did come out here, I don't know. But it does have 5-player play, so if you got a multi-tap, you could play with 5 people if you really wanted to. But as of right now, there is no way to do that on the Genesis 2 Mini because they haven't announced it yet. And I have a feeling this game might not make it because I have a feeling that Sega won't be dealing with multi-tap stuff here in America. And the reason I say that is because they're working with Buffalo specifically as the solo supported third-party peripheral company on this thing. So, and I don't really know how widespread that company is. So it's possible that they might just cut this game because they don't want to deal with additional licensing. Speaking of the Bonanza Brothers, here is Puzzle and Action Ichidant R, which is another 4-player puzzle party game that we probably will not see because it was not localized, and I don't foresee Sega spending the money to localize it whatsoever. Next is Mega Panel, one of Namco's games. This is a slide puzzle type of game that has the dubious distinction of copying the trend in Japanese puzzle games of this sort to have a revealing picture underneath the panels as you clear them out, as you can see in one of these screenshots. This is not coming to America, perhaps for this reason, and it was never brought here originally in the first place. But the principle of the game looks a lot like Panel to Pawn, so it's a nice little competition to Intelligent Systems' take on the puzzle genre. Here's another one that's not coming. This is Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water, in terms of a localized name. This is a Namco adventure RPG of sorts that places you in the world of that anime property, and looks pretty neat, to be completely honest with you. There was some production values put into this game, and it absolutely will not get licensed for America. They will not go through the effort of localizing this. So if you're interested in it, you're going to have to get the Mega Drive Mini 2. Here's something that actually is on both versions of the system. Splatterhouse Part 2, or Splatterhouse 2 as it's known. This is the sequel to the beat-em-up icon Splatterhouse that came out in arcades, that ups the gross factor just a little bit more, as you can see in some of these screenshots, and continues the story of Rick trying to rescue his girlfriend from really crappy situations. I think Splatterhouse is too much for me personally, and it is on both, so it's going to probably be not as gory, since the Genesis 2 Mini is rated T for teen, so it's going to probably have the green gore you're seeing in these photos versus red. But I probably won't be playing it too much because, for whatever reason, the visual aesthetics of Splatterhouse just hits my stomach the wrong way. Afterburner 2, the sequel to the Super Scalar arcade Afterburner. This looks pretty good for the Genesis, especially considering it was pretty early in the Genesis lifeline. Not as smooth as the arcade game, but it does look better, in my opinion, than Space Harrier 2, which was basically doing the same thing. One of the big things that Sega of Japan is doing with the Mega Drive Mini 2 is they licensed a Cyberstick peripheral, which is more expensive than the Mini Drive, or the Mega Drive Mini itself. And you can use it for some of these types of 3D shooter games. So it's cool that this is here. This is on both, but I probably will just try it for a little bit and then find myself content, because this type of game can make me a little bit nauseous. Outrun. This is the port of Sega's classic arcade racer from the 80s, which looks alright. It came out in 91, so it looks a little bit better. It's like they got the handle of that Super Scalar conversion more and more as they did them. This seems to be a pretty good port, but again, it's something that you can get like on the Switch as part of the Sega Ages in its arcade form, so it's not as exciting to me as it might be otherwise. Starblade is currently a Japanese-only exclusive. It's another 3D shooter for the Mega CD. This was by Namco, and this looks rad. Like, this is Star Fox comparable in terms of competition. It is first person, from what I can understand, so that's kind of the big difference. But I was actually very impressed by what the Mega CD was throwing out there in terms of visuals for this game. So I think this is a really cool addition and a really big omission on the part of the Genesis 2 Mini to not have this on there. The Ninja Warriors. This is a port of Taito's arcade classic. It doesn't have as big of a screen, so it might not be quite as visually impressive, but it might actually play a little bit better, because that's one of the issues with the Ninja Warriors, is that the screen size is so big that it feels like it takes forever to get anywhere. The smaller screen size might actually be a benefit to this game. Along with that, this is a Mega CD version, so it does have some special FMV and a remastered soundtrack by Zuntata, and it's probably one of the best ports of the original game, so it's cool that it's here. Night Striker is basically Taito's attempt at a Super Scalar game. Its success level might not quite be the same as Sega's, but it's definitely a strong entry in a 3D shooter like this. It just, when I was watching it in motion, it was a little hard for me to parse where the car was that you're controlling. But beyond that, this game looks great, and again, more Zuntata excellence in terms of a soundtrack. The cool thing is that both of these games from Taito are actually on both versions, and I don't think either of them came out in America, so that's a nice little import perk. We are now in Wave 3, so before we do that, I think we'll quickly jump back to the Genesis Mini 2 and talk about what they have that the Mega Drive Mini 2 does not. So at the moment, this is the roster. I think I can get most of it on screen. So what do we have for the Genesis 2 Mini to make up for the loss of Popful Mail, Magical Tarutukun, Starblade, Mega Panel, Ichidant R, Columns 3, and Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water? Well, we have Outrunners, a Data East sequel to Outrun. We have Super Hang-On, a different Super Scalar port. We have Sonic 3D Blast, a perhaps misguided attempt to counteract Donkey Kong Country with Sonic. Vector Man 2, a different attempt to counteract Donkey Kong Country on the Genesis, but perhaps a bit more successful. The Ooze, an American-developed puzzle action game that's overhead, where you have to control a pile of ooze oozing around. Rainbow Islands Extra, a port of Taito's cute Bubble Bobble spiritual successor. And Rolling Thunder 2, a port of Namco's arcade title, which I like more than the original, but you can get this on Namco Museum for the Switch in its original format. None of these games really make up for any of those, in my opinion. I've heard Outrunners is not as good as Outrun. Super Hang-On is pretty early, so it's probably about the level of Afterburner 2 or Space Harrier 2 in terms of handling the Super Scalar technology well. Sonic 3D Blast is not a particularly good game, especially in the Genesis format. The 32X or the Saturn versions of the game are better. Vector Man 2 is probably the best of the games in terms of Sega's swap-ins, but it is not as well remembered as Vector Man 1. The Ooze is weird. It's a game that I don't think most people remember fondly, and really feels like a bit of a desperation pick on Sega's part. And then Rainbow Islands Extra, that's a good game. I like Rainbow Islands quite a bit, actually, but I don't know if it's going to erase the sting of not having Popful Mail. And Rolling Thunder 2, like I said, is better than the original Rolling Thunder. You can play as a woman in it instead of having to rescue a woman in extremely distressing situations like the original game. But I can't say that it is a worthy replacement for Starblade. So ultimately, the Genesis 2 Mini, as it sits as of this recording, it's underwhelming. It does have a lot of the games that the Mega Drive Mini 2 has, but not having Popful Mail or Starblade is really, in my opinion, hurting it. And I'm concerned about some of the games that were just announced in Wave 3 making it on here as well. So let's run into those. So we have Senrin Sanchon, or Splatter, or Tricycle San. A lot of different names for this game. This is a 1984 Sega arcade game, which is a maze title that M2 decided to port to the Genesis for funsies and never felt like they had a reason to release it until now. So here it is. As a bonus game, it looks cute. I'm cool with it. I think that it looks like a neat take on the maze concept of arcade gameplay, and I want to see a little bit more about how it works and actually try it out. Alright, Gambler Jiko Shinha. This is the original game. There's a sequel for the Sega or the Mega CD that was not chosen because of licensing reasons. This is based on a popular manga franchise that has seen games all over the place, including like 3 or 4 for the Famicom. This is a mahjong game with the characters from the manga and anime. There is a rather horrid caricature of, I don't know if I would call it racism or what, but I just really dislike it when anyone does those big lips in Japanese art. Even if it's for a Japanese person, it just looks horrendously racist, even if it's done by a Japanese person. So this is obviously not going to come to America because of the subject matter, because of the license. A.A. Harimananda, which is another licensed game based on a sumo manga and anime. And Sega themselves has basically said this is not coming to America. This game is a fighting game, but apparently, from what I read, this is more of a meme inclusion than perhaps for its gameplay quality. Sega developed this one themselves, from my understanding. And it looks fine, but I don't know how it plays. And I guess I'll find out when I have to play it, when I do a ranked for this little thing in October or November, probably November. But this is definitely a Japanese exclusive game for multiple reasons. Now here's a surprise. Garo Densetsu 2, aka Fatal Fury 2. This required some effort to get on here. It required SNK giving their okay, but it also required Takara Tomy, who developed the game for the Genesis, to get an okay. And thankfully, through a complicated series of events, they were able to make that happen. This game is unique. It definitely came out at an interesting time. Fatal Fury Special was actually available as an option, but they decided to go with 2 and to really just like make it as grand of a port as they could. It has all 12 characters, including the bosses, available in Versus mode, and apparently there are some pretty distinct differences between this and the Neo Geo original. And it's clear that Takara gave it some effort because the backgrounds change. The characters animate pretty well. I don't know how it's going to compare in terms of like the Neo Geo version, but it's one of those games where it's like, we need some fighting games on this thing. We can't get Mortal Kombat. We're not doing Eternal Champions because that's too mature to do the CD port. What else do we got? Well, let's see if we can get SNK. And they did, and I'm impressed. Super Street Fighter 2, the new challengers. This is probably the better of the 2 versions of Super Street Fighter 2 for the main 16-bit consoles. The Super Nintendo one may look a little bit better, but I think it runs a bit slower. From what I can see, this version definitely lacks a bit of the color palette depth, but it flows pretty well. And it has a couple unique features to it that make it stand out, like this time challenge that you're seeing on the bottom right screenshot there. This was one of the guesses that I had about being on this system. It made sense for Super Street Fighter 2 to be on here because honestly there isn't much else for Capcom to contribute. They didn't do a lot for the Genesis. Once we look past the 4 games that were on the Genesis Mini, which was Strider, Ghouls and Ghosts, both of which were done by Sega, and then we also had Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition and Mega Man The Wily Wars. There wasn't much else. There's like Strider 2, which is not even a Capcom developed game, so I doubt that will ever show its face again. There's like Mercs, which Sega developed. There's Forgotten Worlds, which Sega developed. And then there's Final Fight CD, which is on here, when we'll cover that shortly. And like a couple other things that I can't immediately remember. There's just not a lot to pick from. So the two that they've shown so far make the most sense to me. Alien Soldier. This is confirmed for both versions of the console. Treasure actually announced this early on their own Twitter page, and they confirmed at the reveal yesterday in Wave 3 that this is indeed there. I read that they wanted to include this on the original Mega Drive Mini, but felt that it was too close to Gunstar Heroes in terms of gameplay and some of the visual aesthetic. So they decided not to include it on the Japanese one, and it was something that Japanese players were kind of upset about. So they are making up for that here by including it on both. Alright, we are now into the Mega CD games, and this is Wonder Mega Collection. So this includes 4 different games, but technically it includes 4 versions of the same game. So it has what's called Quiz Scramble, which is in the top left corner. It's a quiz game, not too dissimilar from like Quiz and Dragons. But it appears that a scientist and an assistant are getting asked questions by various animals that they have in a lab. I don't know. I don't fully understand what's happening. But there's FMV videos of the animals. It's an interesting game. But what I read from the producer of the Mega Drive Mini 2 is that the questions will probably only be known by like the 50 plus age bracket, because they were dated when the game came out in the 90s. Flicky is also on here. Flicky did actually make it onto the original Mega Drive Mini, probably the original Genesis Mini, I don't quite remember. But this is a different port. It has some enhanced audio and a couple other gameplay graphical tweaks. So it's not exactly the same game. The same deal is with Paddle Battle. Is that what it's called? Paddle Fighter. That's in the bottom right corner, which is kind of like a space air hockey game. That appeared on the Mega Drive Mini as well, but it has some better audio and a few other little tweaks to it to justify its inclusion. And then last but not least is Pyramid Magic, which did appear on the original Mega Drive Mini, but only the first part. And players were upset about it, and it wasn't known that it was only the first part. So this includes all 4 Pyramid Magic games that were available as a download. So that will fulfill anyone's desire to pick up a block and move around these various mazes to get all the treasure chests and all that stuff. This game does not do anything for me personally, but it's an interesting inclusion because it's basically a give me for getting 4 games on here. And I want you to notice the thing on the case here where it says Victor. Victor is the publisher for Kaio Flying Squadron. So perhaps in the process of getting the rights to Wonder Mega Collection, they got the rights to that too, which would be basically my wish list of Sega CD titles fulfilled if they pulled that off. And speaking of wish list titles, Lunar. Both the Lunar games are here. This is Lunar Eternal Blue. I mentioned when I was talking about Sylphlead that Game Arts being here, it meant that something else was coming. These are those. These are the premier RPGs on the Sega CD and the Mega CD. Will they come to the Genesis Mini? That is a question of the ages as of right now, because Working Designs did the localization, and Vic Ireland has gone AWOL. So, who knows if these will actually get onto the Genesis 2 Mini, but I will guarantee you that if they don't, that system is doomed to fail, because if you're going to have Sega CD games, you have to have the Lunar games, because they are basically the answer to Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest on the Super Nintendo. That is what they are. They are comparable in terms of scope, imagination, and presentation. In fact, I would even argue, given the FMVs being close to anime quality, that the presentation's probably a step above. But super rad that both of the Lunar games are here. It made me so happy yesterday. Final Fight CD. This is probably the definitive port of Final Fight to home consoles in the 90s. It has all 3 characters. It doesn't censor Poison and Roxy. Wow, I almost said Poxy. It doesn't censor those characters, so they are here in the game. There's voiced FMV, a rearranged soundtrack, a time battle mode that you can see here in this screenshot in the top right corner. It is the best way to play Final Fight on a console in the 90s, and it's going to really show off the power of the Mega CD in contrast to the Super Nintendo version of Final Fight, which was horrendously compromised at launch. We're back to the beginning. Alright, to wrap up this discussion, I want to talk about the regional differences between the Genesis Mini and the Mega Drive Mini in its North American PAL version, the Japanese version, and the Taiwan-Korea version, to try to fill in maybe some of the gaps that we don't have on the Mega Drive Mini 2 and the Genesis 2 Mini. So right now I've got this convenient Wikipedia page on the Genesis Mini, sorted by games that North America and the PAL versions did not receive. So we can see Alien Soldiers on there, because it landed in the Taiwan-Korea version. Dyna Brothers 2, Game no Kanzume Antoiku Yu. Hybrid Front, Landgracer 2, Lord Monarch, Mado Monogatari the First. This is actually kind of an interesting one. This is the series that Puyo Puyo comes from. It's hard to believe that this was originally an RPG, and Arl and Co. were spun off into their puzzle giant from this series. Musha, Outrun 2019, Party Quiz Mega Q, Powerball, which is a Namco game, Puyo Puyo 2, Puzzle and Action Tant R, Rent a Hero, The Revenge of Shinobi, Shining Force 2, Slap Fight MD, which is a Toa Plun vertical shooter, Snow Bros, Sword of Vermilion, Target Earth, which recently got a Switch Online port, and Yu Yu Hakusho Moikoyo Taisusen. In contrast, Japan did not get Alien Soldier, Outrun 2019, Shining Force 2, Sword of Vermilion, Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle, Altered Beast, Castle of Illusion, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, which makes sense because they got Puyo Puyo 2, which is the original, Earthworm Jim, Eco the Dolphin, Eternal Champions, Kid Chameleon, Light Crusader, Shinobi 3, Sonic Spinball, the original Sonic the Hedgehog, Strider, Toe Jam and Earl, Vector Man, Virtua Fighter 2, and Wonder Boy and Monster World. Then in Taiwan, Korea, they did not receive Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle, Altered Beast, Earthworm Jim, Echo the Dolphin, Eternal Champions, Kid Chameleon, Light Crusader, Shinobi 3, Sonic Spinball, Toe Jam and Earl, Vector Man, Virtua Fighter 2, Dyna Brothers 2, Hybrid Front, Lord Monarch, Mado Monogatari 1, Party Quiz Mega Q, Rent a Hero, Yu Yu Hakusho, Dynamite Heady, and Street Fighter 2, the Champions Edition. So, for Japan, out of those games, this is what I feel has a possibility of showing up. I think that if we were to pick 5 games that would show up that did not show up in the original Mega Drive Mini, I think Light Crusader has a chance. I think Shinobi 3 has a chance. I think Shining Force 2 has a chance. I think Strider has a chance. And I think the original Sonic the Hedgehog had a chance. And then Wonder Boy and Monster World is like 6th. That would be the other one that I would think. Those are games that I think could show up on the Mega Drive Mini 2. I don't bet on any of them showing up. They seem to definitely be thinking differently on this machine and trying to really collect games that are a little bit more eclectic or rare or what the fans want. So out of those, maybe Sonic 1, maybe Strider. We already got 2 Shining games, so I'm a little less hopeful about Shining Force 2 being on there. But for North America, on the other hand, that changes things quite a bit. I think Musha has a good chance of showing up because it is on the Switch Online app for Genesis. I also think Revenge of Shinobi has a good chance of showing up. Target Earth has a good chance of showing up because it's also on the Switch Online app. From there, maybe Snow Bros. But at the moment, we don't have Tatsujin confirmed. Maybe Sword of Vermilion. Maybe Shining Force 2. Maybe Outrun 2019. But otherwise, I don't know. The fact that some of these games aren't currently on there as replacements is concerning, given some of the games that currently are. I'm looking at you, the ooze. Anyway, that's just some speculation on my part. I also have an article on my blog about further speculation of games I hope to see. I really want to see the Battlemania games get brought over, and that would be amazing if they did. Those are probably like the 2 that I'm most excited about seeing possibly show up. Kaio Flying Squadron I mentioned earlier, of course. But maybe some of the Adia-owned Nihon Telenet games would be great, like El Viento or Ernest Evans. But outside of that, I don't really know. I have been delighted in the journey so far. It will be interesting to see what the remaining announcements are. We don't know about 30 of the games for the Genesis 2 Mini, and we have about 20 to go for the Mega Drive Mini 2. And August 11th is the next announcement date for Japan, at least. And then there'll be another one probably a couple weeks later in August. So we'll know all 53 plus games by the end of August. As of right now, I am not changing my reservation. I have a pre-order for the Mega Drive Mini 2, and I think I'm going to keep it. Even if Lunar and Popful Mail magically show up on the Genesis Mini 2, I kind of don't want the working designs versions of those games because they made them harder, and the localization style of working designs is very 90s meme before that term was even invented. It's very pop culture-y, and I have to imagine that there is probably some very wince-worthy stuff buried in those localizations. But I'm not sure what to think about the Genesis Mini 2. I feel like as of right now, with that initial salvo of games and Popful Mail not being there, it just really feels like it's an afterthought. Like, oh yeah, we should probably release another one of these for America, huh? There's nothing announced for Europe. There's nothing announced for Asian territories like the original one. So as of right now, it's Japan and America, and even that's weird because it's an Amazon exclusive for the Genesis 2 Mini, but it's through Japan. You have to actually go through Amazon Japan to order one, which is just weird. Why isn't Amazon US handling that? And everything that Sega's saying is that there's not going to be a ton of these, in contrast to the Genesis Mini and Mega Drive Mini. So I'm just going to keep my pre-order for the Mega Drive Mini 2 and just be happy with that. I'm already more intrigued by the roster. It's basically addressed 3 of the 4 games that I really wanted for it, which is both Lunar Games and Popful Mail. And then if Kaio Flying Squadron magically shows up, then that's a big plus. In terms of the Mega Drive, I hope the Battle Mania games show up. I'm not taking the Vic Tokai logo being on Mansion of Haunted Souls Genesis 2 box art as anything of an indicator that could happen. Vic Tokai's been out of the game business for a while. But honestly, if anyone could make that happen, it would probably be Sega right now, because they have already pulled some incredible shenanigans to get some really unexpected games onto this thing. But I'm just going to say right now that I wouldn't bet too hard on the Genesis 2 Mini being anywhere as cool as the Mega Drive Mini 2. I'm just feeling like that's not a priority for the team. I think that it's nice that they're trying, but some of the swap-ins are not great. They could have done better on that front already. The games that Americans are losing are really interesting and compelling, and the Wave 3 basically cemented that for me, because while I'm not going to play the Mahjong game, I can guarantee you that. I have no interest in it. Everything else that they announced that looked like it'd be region locked looks really fascinating to me, just to try out and see what I think. So that's my thoughts on the Mega Drive Mini 2. It is probably the thing I'm most anticipating outside of my pre-order for Rocky Reshrine to actually ship. And I'm pretty excited about Xenoblade 3 and Splatoon 3 and the Ninja Turtles games, but honestly, Sega announcing a Mega Drive Mini 2 in the lineup that it currently has, I'm pretty stoked on it. So we'll see if it could dethrone Taito's Egret as the mini console of the year. It's on a good path to. Alright, my friends, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into all of the Mega Drive Mini 2 Genesis 2 Mini shenanigans. And we'll be back next week. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Take care.